Okay, Rangun, glad to connect again. It's always been a pleasure whenever we meet. Welcome to Inside the Club series. Thanks for accepting and doing this conversation with us. You've been building in this space for a very long time. I'm always fascinated by any kind of builder. And in your case, it's a combination of meeting a builder and in a space which is has to be close to everybody's heart, apart from just being in the tummy. So lovely to connect and welcome to the series.
Thank you, Ayyappan. Looking forward to this conversation. The first one was really great. Probably for the first time, I found somebody so very keen to learn and so keen to know about what goes into safe food. I think this could be a kind of continuation of that discussion that we had in your office.
Yeah, lovely. So it'll be good to know a lot more about you. But before we get into that, let's start with something that you have noticed, something you have observed. What do you think is the single biggest misunderstanding that any urban consumer would have about farmers? Because we all believe that we know farmers, including me. I think the generation that we have grown up with, especially for people who have never been to the rural side during the growth phases. The only thing that we have seen or heard about farmers is probably when you go on a vacation somewhere, or you read about them somewhere, or you see them in the movies. These are the only sort of visibility you've had into the farmer's life. What do you think is the single biggest misconception that urban India has for the Indian farmers?
Well, in my view, actually, the biggest misconception that people have is that farmers are naive, right? And they're irrational in their choices, and the kind of agriculture they practice is very inefficient. That is something which strikes you immediately whenever you are in conversation or are in a dialogue in the urban India, especially, and urban India of today. You spoke about films, for example. If you see films, let's say 4 or 5, or let's say 3 to 4 decades back also, films captured much of what a farmer or farming was going through or agriculture was going through. That, I think, has undergone a change over a period of time. I don't see that kind of real this thing being captured by, let's say mainstream cinema. And that is, I think, a very big disconnect between what farming and farmers are going through and how urban consumers or let's say urban India actually thinks of farmers. I think this is the biggest disconnect between the two. And this is mainly because of the fact that there is a great amount of lack of awareness in terms of the constraints under which farmers operate. So it's easy for any, let's say, an urban citizen of this country who find it very difficult to understand this fact that why don't farmers, make a certain kind of choice? Why can't they just stop farming something which is not yielding them much, or not really, the price realization is very low, or productivity is low? Why don't they just give up on that and start growing something else? Or the fact that why aren't they adopting certain kind of seeds, right? Or why don't they have access to water or something like that, right? And these are very, these are difficult sort of constraints to overcome for a farmer. And they're not simple. But in the eyes of somebody who has no, and I'll not say this is their fault or something, there's a problem in terms of the connect that has, which it needs to be established, but it's not there. For an urban individual, it is difficult to understand that, whether these constraints are real or unreal. So I think that is where the problem is.
Got it. So I think it's a very valid point that you're bringing on, especially what I think when the Brits exited, somewhere I remember reading that almost 3/4 of the country was in poverty and we didn't have enough to feed. So a lot of things had to change very, very quickly. So of course, and hence the practices that had to be brought in to increase the productivity and cultivation would have been very different.
Yeah.
So the necessity also might have forced the farmers. So are they trying to come out of it, or they don't like bother about all of this so much? What goes into their thought process?
Well, you see, let's say in today's context, or let's say in today's grammar, if you say that, let's say in terms of business, I think farmers are also very, they are mature business people, right? They deal with markets. They have to make very difficult choices in the terms of what they will grow and what is going to be sold, let's say, after a period of 6 months, etc. So these are difficult decisions to be made. So that is one part. And you spoke about, as a country as a whole, the kind of changes that we had to go through because, as you said, the country was poor and we didn't have enough to feed the population. 60s was a period when India, underwent a radical change, and that is what is called Green Revolution. And if you look at that strategy, you will find that it was basically about betting on the strong. Right, and the understanding was that there will be a trickle-down effect which will happen. The strong areas of this country will feed the rest of the country, and slowly the rest of the country will also adopt similar technologies and strategy. And that unfortunately did not work. So you have these areas, you have these pockets of great increase in productivity, etc., and certain crops growing very fast. Let's say Green Revolution was restricted to, let's say, more or less to wheat, paddy and sugarcane, and some of these vegetables like potatoes, and the rest of the crops which India actually consumed were completely ignored under that technology. And it was all about the fact that the first thing is that our granaries should be full, right? And then we will worry about the rest of this thing. So it remained concentrated in Punjab, Haryana, and these kind of areas, and the rest of the country continued to be the way it was. And that has led to a certain situation today. So, we took almost about 3 to 4 decades to realize that there was something going wrong in the strategy that we have adopted. So we may have become self-sufficient in paddy and wheat, but in the rest of the crops that we consume, because we don't consume just paddy and wheat, right? We have become, more and more dependent on external sources. That was one part of the problem. The other problem was that this entire strategy was based on inputs and chemical inputs. So you had to have very high-yielding seeds, followed by an entire regime, which was about chemical fertilizers, pesticides, water. And this could not have been was not readily available everywhere. That was the number one problem. The second problem was, even in those areas where this could have been made accessible and was accessible, which are the Green Revolution areas, very soon over the few decades, you found that this was not working. So productivity stagnated, your soils got completely depleted because there was no addition of organic manure. There was organic manures, carbon started falling in the soils. And we started relying more and more on groundwater. So, and we started extracting more and more. So you had almost like aridification of land. Your alluvial soils or the best soils became arid and are now very difficult to bring them back. Salinity became a huge problem in India in the Green Revolution areas. So all these problems one had to kind of now you are having to deal with after so many years. So you have the problems of the Green Revolution areas, and the problems in the rest of the areas became much more acute because there was no attention paid to the crops that they were growing, these small farmers of India, and also to those lands. So everybody was in their own way trying somewhere or the other to ape Green Revolution technology in a haphazard sort of way. So areas which did not have water still started using more fertilizers and pesticides in the hope of getting more yields. They started using the kind of seeds without having access to fertilizers and pesticides. So all these problems came together, and the worst of all was that for a farmer who was able to manage in the sense of a subsistence farming also, right, through their land, found it difficult because now the risk element went up. So you started investing much more on land in the hope of getting a maximum yield. But as soon as there was a drop in yield, right, you fell into a debt trap. So there was this additional problem, and which in many cases led to dispossession of land, right? So the only asset that you had, you got dispossessed by that. So you had more pressure on cities because these people started migrating then, because the land was not yielding much. So you created another problem for yourself in the cities. So farming and agriculture not paying the kind of attention that it required, or the kind of strategy that India required, not being adopted, has led to many problems for this country.
Got it. Yeah, no, thanks for explaining it in length. But I got you into the topic so soon.
Yes.
I think we'll take a step back and then
No
we'll talk
problem.
about you a little more. What made you to sort of get into this? When the first time I started using as a consumer Safe Harvest as a brand, the first thing I felt was like, what a perfect name, right? I mean, a brand being signified so beautifully. So the story behind you starting this 2 decades back, and how did you come up with the brand name?
Well, you see, first of all, Safe Harvest is not a company which is can be associated only with me, right? So it was founded by 8 farmer organizations. The one of the farmer organizations is, I'm a co-founder of that non-profit, and these 8 organizations came together to who were actually already engaged in sustainable agriculture practices. They were working with farmers, right? So they were. So there was this kind of sensitivity to the fact that there is something wrong in agriculture that is being practiced, the cultivation practices which are being followed across the country, not just in the green revolution areas or something like that, right? And there is some correction which is required, right? The farmers have to be given some kind of solutions and choices. Today, the only choice is to see to it that the land should yield more, right? That is the only kind of strategy which is being followed, and there are no other options available for the farmer. So that led to these 8 organizations coming together and getting into what is called non-pesticide management of agriculture. And the reason why it was about pesticides and not, if you ask me, I do believe that yes, it should be about non-chemical farming. It should be about the fact that farmers need not use market-based inputs, and much can be done at home, and you can get comparable yields. You don't have to really sacrifice on yields. But as a first step, giving up on pesticides is probably the easiest to do for a farmer, because they cultivate very low fertility soils. So if you take away chemical fertilizers also from their land, there would be a dip in productivity, definitely, and that would be kind of a disincentive for them to adopt sustainable agriculture practices. So pesticides is the problem in food that way, if you really see, because they come in as residues even if a single spray happens on your land. And most of these pesticides, or let's say chemicals which are found in food, are also carcinogenic. So they can have detrimental effect on your health, etc. And this can be easily taken care of. So that was the idea behind setting up this non-pesticide management of agriculture protocol. And these organizations had been working for quite some time with farmers. The demand actually came from these farmers. So when they saw the benefit of actually following a protocol which allowed them not to use synthetic pesticides at all, and still maintain their productivity and production on their land, also brought in another, kind of thought in their minds, was the fact that this produce was still going into mainstream channels. So there was no Safe Harvest at that time, right? And so there was a kind of a push from below for this group of 8, you can call them, that we need a different identity to this produce. We are doing all this work on our field, and at the end of the season we just go and sell it at the same place at the same price without any kind of identity being maintained, and get mixed up with mainstream produce, right? And that led to the birth of Safe Harvest. So, the 8 organizations got together, thought about it, and felt that yes, there is a need. So it's actually, let's say, a Safe Harvest is not so much of a market opportunity sort of player. It comes from the other end. It comes from the end where farmers need to be given a connect to organize markets and to organize retail markets. And that's how Safe Harvest was born. But my work actually, when you talked about my life and the fact that, so my life started 3.5 decades ago when I went to Madhya Pradesh from Delhi. And we were a group of friends, and I think we were quite crazy, I think, to believe that we could, to bring change, etc. And we wanted to use our education not just for doing jobs, and actually work with people in the field. And when we went to Madhya Pradesh,
so you were always passionate about doing such things. I mean, is that how?
Yeah, I
it
think
was?
so. Because. I'm talking when I was in my 20s, so and similarly for my other friends who were with me, I was fortunate to be one amongst 8. One amongst 10 friends of mine who decided to do this, and we chose Madhya Pradesh. We went to Madhya Pradesh, and soon we were in touch with other groups, and we were not the only crazy ones. There were other. You found other organizations already working, and we had luckily a large support group, and the group actually, and Baba, we came into contact with Baba Amte, who was our mentor, who gave the name to my organization, Samaj Pragati Sahyog, and he actually told us that you should work on solutions for people, right? And you should hear them. You should listen to them before you come up with your, agenda or, solutions that way. And you must work in tribal regions, because he said that tribals are like, those days the common terminology for India was third world, right? So he said, in this third world, tribals are fourth world, right? Even the third world is exploiting the fourth world, right? So he said, you must go into tribal regions and work. And so we did. So we went to tribal regions. And incidentally, many of my friends who went with me were very keen anyway to go. And so they got this extra push and this thing, and support from Baba. So we went into tribal Madhya Pradesh, and we decided to stay put, not be like our other organizations who are in cities. We went deep inside. My headquarters is in Bagli, which is a Tehsil headquarters in district Devas. And what we found during our interactions and, with people there, because we didn't know what we have to do. We were there, right? So when we started meeting people, we came up with this first, the fact that what could be the solution to your misery or your problems, right? And the response that we got was, you please take care of the water situation, do something on water, irrigation basically, rest we will manage. So we said, okay, if that is the case, and then we started looking around, and I'm not an engineer. So, and what we learned was that, yes, there is a great possibility. And these were areas with less than 20% irrigated, of the arable land. It was a very, miserable situation. So very quickly, actually, there were solutions again. There were solutions available, not applied. What is called watershed management, that is done. And basically, the thought behind watershed management is that there is rain for 3 months in a year in most of India, right? Not in the region from where you come. But most of India, arid regions, you get 90 days or 120 days of rain. And within those 120 days of the period of monsoon, you probably get rain for less than 60 days, right? And within those 60 days, you probably get rain for less than 60 hours, right? So it's so concentrated, right? So rain falls and it kind of disappears from your land. And for the rest of the season, you have to depend on other sources, and you lose your most valuable asset within that 120 days. So what do you do to that? So you stop that water, or let's say in the watershed terminology, you slow down the runoff, right? You basically, in my area, in my tribal region, people say that ये मेहमान आपके घर 120 दिन के लिए आया. It's like a guest, to your place for 120 days, right? So you want this guest to be there for 150 days. You want to lengthen the stay. So what do you do that, right? So you build some structures, you stop the flow, or you say you slow down the flow of water from from the streams, etc. And that is watershed management, right? So that is what we did, and that had dramatic results immediately. The groundwater levels went up. People started digging wells, and they found water where there was no water. In situ moisture went up, so their crops became better because there was more moisture for a longer period of time in their lands, even after there was no rain. But what followed along with that was, immediately after that, what we learned was the fact that people, when they have access, when you increase supply of something, right, demand also increases, right? And in this case, this demand is not very great. So in a normal parlance, it's a great thing that, demand is going up for something. But here, the problem was that as soon as demand for water started going up, demand for market inputs also started going up. People wanted to grow more and more on their land. And for that, they brought in, because this is what they had learned from the peer group. So they brought in hybrid seeds, they brought in fertilizer, they brought pesticides. So within 5 years, you're back to square one almost, you see, because whatever supply you had created was being used up, and risk was going up. And that is what took us to agriculture. So we started from water, we went to agriculture, and then we got into associated issues around agriculture, like credit,
Got it.
working with women and such stuff.
Earlier, so what triggered you initially was to go back to the people,
Yes.
and then check what the problem statement was, and then you wanted to work on it.
Absolutely.
In the course of the problem statement, you realize it's better that you pick the problem statement than somebody else picking it up for you.
Yeah, because you were creating problems for yourself, you see, because we addressed that problem statement to a large extent, right? But it was a partial solution.
Yeah.
Right? We thought it's a complete solution. Once water would come, everything would be, very great, and but it was not like that. It was not hunky dory, you see, after that. The actual problems began once you had addressed, partially the problem statement.
Got it.
So the rest of the thing was far more difficult, because that involved going into their land, right? And agriculture is their main source of livelihood. So why should they actually listen to you, right? Knowing fully well that you are not an agriculturist. So, but the fact is that you were like an intermediary there, right? You brought in these experts to their land where they could speak, right? In India, there's the other problem. These research labs and the researchers and whoever is working on agriculture or seeds or cultivation practices do not have access to what their technology is leading to. They don't have a way of getting a feedback from the field. So there's no chance of improvement. So that is also a gap which was addressed at that time, right? And as soon as we got into it, the next step was that once they adopted these practices, what I'm talking about, that safe harvest thing came up through that. So that was also part of the problem statement. See, it was not on my mind to form safe harvest. We had gone to do something else. But then this was an issue. Market was it's a very big lever, and it was not working for those farmers. So you needed some trigger to make it work for them. Safe harvest was one of the ways that we found that it could. That itself may be partial or something like that, because we have not achieved some magical success or something like that. Probably that will take some more time, and maybe now that FirstClub is also there, who believes in similar sort of this thing, addressing in this sort of way the problem statement. I think we need partners and partners.
Got it. Yeah. So you mentioned that basically the supply was getting created, but there was no market to sort of go and be sold there directly, and hence it got mixed with the regular produce. So people were not able to sort of differentiate like how this is better compared to the regular stuff that was available.
Exactly.
Right. So in spite of putting in that sort of an effort and the right input to create that produce, it was not going with the right objective that you would have ideally wanted. So
Yes.
that's what triggered the
Yeah.
brand Safe
Yes.
Harvest.
So there was no identity to that produce, you see, because it was being grown without chemicals. It was grown without pesticides, right? It had its attributes, right? Which the farmer, you see, this is a classic syndrome, right? The farmer, the seller actually knows what the attributes are. The buyer does not,
Yeah.
right? And the buyer is completely cynical, right? So there is no way to bridge this gap, this information gap, right? I, as a producer, know this produce is better than anybody else's produce because it has these kind of advantages. It has no residues. It's completely safe. And by the way, there's another thing linked to this, is the fact that if you go to any farmer, right, not any farmer, but most of the farmers in India, you will find that farmers for their own household consumption would always reserve a patch which is different from what they grow for the market, for what is for the market.
Oh.
Right? And this is because they know what is going into the
Wow.
crop which is going into the market.
Oh my God.
And they don't want that to enter their kitchen. So as far as possible, they will do this. Right? They may not be able to do, let's say, for paddy or something like
Yeah.
that, because you can't separate out, etc. But most of the this thing, they will do that. Vegetables and fruits, definitely.
Wow.
So
This is super surprising to hear. I've never
yes, absolutely.
thought like.
You see, this is again comes from that disconnect. That farmers are naive, right? Farmers are irrational. Farmers are not naive. Farmers are not irrational. They know what is going on, right? But they're helpless, right? They know what is happening to their land because of all the things that they are kind of adding to it, right? But if you don't offer them a solution, right, what do? They have to live with that. They know it's all short term, and tomorrow their land is going to become even worse than today.
Got it. So even, I mean, of course, apart from this is the right way to grow and not using chemicals and all of that, we all understand that it's safe. We'll get into the details of it in some time. But even from an economic reason, from a farmer's perspective, if they keep using this, the land is going to get
Yes.
completely spoiled, right? And you're not going to grow anything on
Correct.
top of that.
Yeah.
So even just for economic reason, they should be stopping that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But somebody needs to sort of have this market
Yes.
who are able to sort of create the demand for them, so that there is an incentive for them to do this, so that they don't just think about tomorrow, but today as well. Today is equally important.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. I think farmers are basically waiting for this solution to be offered to them. And I don't think adoption would be that big a problem. You see, if adoption was such a big problem, we would not have been working with 90,000 farmers today. See, with my kind of revenues or the sale that I do through different platforms or in different regions, I may not be buying from more than 15 to 20,000 farmers, right? On a very back of the envelope sort of calculation if you do on productivity. But there are 90,000 farmers who are practicing this. So they see some merit in that. That's why they continue to do that. And it's just another trigger which is required. And market is a very big trigger. And if that comes in, you will easily see this doubling, tripling.
Got it. So that you spoke about like how the brand origin started, what led to the other, and then how the brand came into the picture. The tagline itself of Safe Harvest is pesticide-free goodness.
Yes.
Right. And this is one of the very, very commonly asked questions, even to me, when I speak to the consumers about, hey, you call something organic, certified organic, then you call something organically grown, then you call something as residue free, right? So there are like so many terminologies. Firstly, that confuses customers, right? After that, like, how do I decide one over the other? That is point number one. Number two, how do I trust that it's important, and also I know that whatever they're claiming is what actually it is.
Right.
So taking the first question, what are like these are very very different types. You have consciously made Safe Harvest as a brand to be pesticide free and
Yes.
not as organic or anything. So
Yeah.
what led to this?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ipan, because one is grappling with this every day, we ourselves, right? So you see, the thought behind this is that the term organic is reserved, or let's say, is owned by when you get a certificate, right? So until and unless you go through this protocol of audit or whatever the process is, you are not organic, right? You may be practicing, as you're saying, organically grown, right? It has no meaning at all, right? Because the term organic is about getting certified, right? And certified by agencies which are listed, which are known, a protocol which has to be followed, which is kind of very transparent, it's in public domain. But the whole process still remains very complex and expensive. We must always keep in mind that India is 85% smallholder farmers. And even if a smallholder farmer on his own, on her own, is certified organic, right? You are in the midst of non-certified farmers, right? You're practicing there, your marketable surplus is very low. Because ultimately, as I earlier said, they are anyway reserving part of their land and growing stuff for their own house, and they are very clear on how they are going to grow it and why they are growing it, right? Now the question of certification comes only to satisfy market, right? Because otherwise, why should they get a certificate, etc., right? They know all the benefits of growing it in an organic manner, etc., etc. Now the certificate is only for the market, correct? Now there is this complexity that you can't be an individual because you're too small, because market will not come to you till you have reasonable market surpluses, right? So you have to be a group, you have to be a larger group. There has to be an expense that has to be picked up. There are other complexities to it because you can't just jump from being a mainstream conventional farmer to organic. There is a transition period, etc., etc. So there are a lot of these kind of complications. And at the end of it, the farmer is never sure that, one, whether he'll have access to markets, right? And whether he'll have access to fair value for the fair price for the produce that is going to come from their land. So these two things remain in the uncertain world, right? Till these two are also solved, they will not actually switch. So for us, it was very clear that the areas that we were working, and when I say us, it means these 8 or 9 organizations who were responsible for, starting, or let's say, Safe Harvest brand. It was clear that our farmers are in very difficult geographies. That's number one. They're not very close to some city or something like that the produce can easily reach. So their logistics is an issue. And I'm talking about 2010, 2009, 10, 11. It's not 2025, right? So that's number one. Number two is the issue of the fact that all these farmers that we were working with were cultivating very low fertility soils, right? You had created access for water, and you had brought in a kind of a regime which they could follow, etc., etc. So if you ask these farmers today to give up on everything, right, then you have to find a substitute, because the primary task of actually making farmers switch from, let's say, unsustainable farming methods to what in our eyes were sustainable farming methods would require solutions, right? So the first task is that in an unsustainable agricultivation practices method, they were getting a certain output, right? So the first, your minimum task that you have to achieve is that you have to match that output, correct? Even if you don't promise them more, etc. There has to be kind of a matching of that kind of productivity, right? So if my doubt is that as soon as they stop using a particular input, their output will fall, I know that is a disincentive. My farmers would not switch because this is their main source of livelihood. And if I go and impact that negatively, that too, then it is very difficult for the farmers to switch. So I need to kind of promise that and keep my promise. And as far as pesticides was concerned, we were very sure that this is the main criminal, the main evil. If they give up on this, there is no problem because there are other solutions available to kind of take care of the pests, and they will get comparable yields. And as far as the consumer is concerned, the consumer is also worried about residues in food, right? And chemical residues in food. If I take care of pesticide residues in food, I have taken care of the problem, right? Unless and until my food is coming from, let's say, really green revolution areas who have been practicing really resource intensive farming for very long, because heavy metals, which is because of chemical fertilizers, it takes place in food, comes into food as residues over a period of time. It's through accumulation, right? It is not through one spray or use or something like that. And farmers in my areas were anyway not using much, but they were still using it, right? So if I had taken care of pesticides, I had taken care of the problem of the farmers, I had taken care of problems of my consumers in urban areas, and I would have addressed more or less the problems of ecology also, right? So it was a kind of a win-win-win solution. And that is how we came to pesticide-free, right? The other thing that we brought, which, by the way, addresses the question of confusion, what you brought in, which we were kind of aware even at that time that we were probably doing a disservice that way, because organic was already recognized, conventional was recognized. Conventional was all about growing in whichever way, chemical, etc. Organic was associated, or let's say identified with the non-use of chemicals in for your production, etc. Now we were coming in with another logic, right? It is not as if we were for fertilizers. So that is a misconception that people have, that we are kind of confused sort of people who say yes to one part of it, no to another. This thing is not like that. Many of my farmers actually don't use any chemicals at all, right? But as a position, I can't take, because my thing is about certification. My problem is with the certification part, which my farmers cannot easily do that, right? If that part becomes easy, there is no harm in a farmer actually becoming organically certified, right? So there are two issues to that. Now, the third issue that we tried to address, by which nobody was doing, even in the, let's say, in the certified organic world at that time, was the fact that from day one we said, we will make testing mandatory, right? Lab tested, FSSAI lab accredited testing of our produce will be mandatory. Only then it will be called, or let's say labeled as pesticide free, when we get a residue free report from the lab, which is going to be a third party lab. So we started testing from day one. And this I'm talking about 2014, when nobody was talking about testing. It was not even in the protocol of organic certification, by the way. Certified organic was only about protocols. It was not about testing the produce. It was about land being certified, not the produce, right? So you assume that the produce is also, right? So that's where the difference comes between pesticide free and organic also. And that is what we have maintained. We have progressively, and in successive years, we tried to improve on this. One, we started testing. Second, we started testing batch wise. The second thing was that. The third was we started testing at the time of purchase, procurement, and then at the time of packaging also. So there were two levels of testing which started happening to the produce, to any kind of produce, right? And these reports, the lastly what we have done is that we have brought in a QR code on the pack itself today. And we are just saying that you click on the QR code, you will be taken to the report. So it was open access to the reports. It was batch wise, which is available to people. And we want to further build on this, just to kind of build more trust into this. Now, this is not about trying to, have some kind of, this is not something, a critique on other, processes being followed or other protocols being followed. I'm talking about the fact that somewhere we want to bring more and more trust amongst consumers, because until unless that happens, consistency in demand will not happen, and then that doesn't help my farmers. So we are only trying to address that. And to answer your question in another way is, when you're coming from the production side, right? As long as you're talking about safe cultivation practices, right? It's about let a million flowers bloom, right? We are trying to do something organic. This thing is also trying to do something. Somewhere or the other, we'll meet, correct? But for the consumer, I totally agree that there could be, we are leaving a lot of space for confusion, right? That who to believe, who not to believe, right? Our job as a brand, right, is to kind of take care of this mistrust, take care of this cynicism amongst consumers, right? That you're charging more, I don't know what actually you're true to your claim or no. So that is something that we are trying to address in our own way, and which we feel is extremely important, because until unless that happens, you will not be able to have consistent demand for your produce.
So you're saying the pesticide-free is as safe as organic, if not better from a produce point of view, since here the produce is tested.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
Got it. Now,
I feel that about validity, basically. You see, you make a claim, you have to offer validity.
Yeah.
Right? So that is what, that's what everybody expects.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing.
Got it. And good that you mentioned about it, like that every pack of yours carry about this report.
Yes.
Right. And that's very important.
Yeah.
Because it's not just going to be about like, hey, I got something tested.
Yeah.
After that, I don't know what happens to it.
Yes.
But every single thing being tested. Yeah. So just on that point, I mean, we've spoken about FirstClub in detail. So for us, as a platform, we believe that it's very important to sort of pass on this information and to create the trust amongst consumers. We don't want to be a retailer who will sell anything and everything, and the choice should be given to the consumers. We believe that certain standard needs to be set when it comes to food, and how do you sort of put that standard is going to be through these tests and reports. So on the app, right now, if you go look at it, we have integrated the reports. I think ours is the only app. I don't know globally if anybody is doing, but in India, we are the only ones who are showing the reports before even you purchase the product. Yeah. So that makes it a lot more, from a consumer point of view, aware, trusting the platform, trusting the brand, trusting the product, and all this work that you are talking about, end of the day, needs to be taken to the consumer. Absolutely. So that was the reason behind integrating these test reports.
No, and this is so important for us. It's such a big encouraging, it's encouraging news for us, because probably FirstClub is the first platform which is giving so much credence to this, right? You are placing it right on top of the agenda for you, right? That you want every produce which is sold through your platform to be credible, to be ethical, and stand by the claim. That normally does not happen with other kind of platforms. And I see this actually, I connect this to growing awareness, right? You as a platform has come up. There are consumers who are coming back to us also, asking us questions on, what do you mean when you say you're aflatoxin free, or let's say 231 tests you have done, etc. So these questions, I'll say about even 5 years back, pre-COVID days, were completely absent. As soon as we have got this QR code onto our pack, and we are also kind of talking about it, and then we have partners like you, that there is a kind of a chorus building, right? And I see that also happening with some other brands. You see, we started in 2014, since we, when we started serious business, but you see other brands also now doing this. And that I feel is, a great this thing for satisfaction for us, that something which has started by a small non-entity like Safe Harvest is now being picked up by bigger brands also, and is becoming important, right? And as you go along and you make it more and more important, I'm sure this movement will grow.
No, the moment one is like publishing a report and then saying that this particular brand is ready to give you that test report,
Yes.
the question that we are asked by the consumers is like, oh, you don't have XYZ brand. Does it mean that they didn't pass the
Exactly.
test?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's super important. That
Yes.
automatically puts a question
Correct,
on
correct.
everybody.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
the industry practice starts changing. The
Yes.
change could be from one brand, from
Correct.
one retailer,
Yeah, yeah.
but I think it will percolate across and it will make
Sure,
it important
absolutely.
for everybody.
Yeah.
So going back, I think what in 1990s is when this started overall, right? I think when you had to create the market for pesticides.
So that happened in, let's say, 2009. Safe Harvest was born.
Got it.
We got into serious business around 2014-15.
Got it.
So that we took about 5 years.
Yes,
We
to-
can say this
Wow.
organizations, which were more or less only working with farmers, didn't know a damn thing about how to market and what to market.
Got it.
Right? Took some time before, kind of coming into
Understood.
and launching into the market.
Got it. So in this 10, 11 year, the ecosystem or the channel and the distribution that you would have seen, you would have placed yourself in the mom and pop stores, the local kirana stores. You would
Yes.
have placed in large format retail stores. Then I think in this phase, e-commerce came in.
Yep.
Then quick commerce. Now there is a platform like ours who says that, yeah, I'm very clear that
Yes.
these are the only products we will sell.
Correct.
So from one extreme end of creating the market to one platform dedicated to sell such products. How do you see this journey?
It's been, I'll say it's like a market maturing, right? So when we began, even at that time, let's say even if you divide India into, the 4 zones, South was considered to be more aware than the rest of the country in terms of, purchase of organic or let's say products grown without chemicals, etc. And Bangalore that way was a leader even in those days. I think in that respect the story remains more or less the same. But what I'll say is that yes, the rest of India has caught up that way, right? And that's thanks to, let's say, e-commerce. Because I don't think if this digital marketplace had not been there, it would have probably taken that much more time for it to kind of get across. So that has played its role, I'll say, in especially for this category. For the rest of the categories, they were anyway there, etc. They had their distribution channels. But a great service has been done by the online, whether you call it e-commerce, quick commerce, and now your platform. But I think that we have benefited a lot from that. And the other thing is that the social media also has kind of grown, which has given an opportunity to discuss these issues. So I think that goes hand in hand that way, online, because both are digital platforms. They both work in conjunction with each other that way. So there is some amount of familiarity of a person who comes onto online channels with social media platforms also. So they're looking at information on social media and then, very quickly looking for products online. I think that I see a change, because earlier, if you had to convey something or communicate, you didn't have this easy sort of access. Today, probably you can do a good job or a better job of doing that. You may not succeed immediately, but over a period of time, if you're consistent, yes, messaging probably, if it's done in a proper fashion, in a mature sort of way, I think you can reach out to many more consumers and prospective sort of consumers. I think that is a big change that I do see. And rest of India is catching up with the South. South is anyway growing. Bangalore is also growing in terms of awareness. Awareness has gone up post-COVID. So there was a kind of very big shift. So almost like transformational shift in terms of awareness amongst consumers.
So Safe Harvest works with around 30 collectives, each collective having thousands of farmers associated with it. So how does this change collectively for all of them? Like, what has it enabled for them?
Well, the first thing is that some of these collectives actually, when they started working with us, their membership base was quite small. So, and this relationship over these many years has helped them to kind of expand their base. Many more farmers have now joined in, and as said earlier, also market is a very big lever, right? And so that has actually helped these farmer organizations to expand their base, firmly establish themselves in their own regions. And then secondly, the fact is that our relationship with them is not transactional. It's kind of more like partnerships, right? We fulfill some of their requirements, they fulfill some of our requirements. So, and it is a kind of a relationship where even if you kind of in a season, for example, or some of your farmers are not able to follow the protocol fully, right, and you are delinquent and you deviate from this thing, it's more like a parent-child relationship, right? If a child or a parent makes a mistake, the relationship doesn't go away, right? You still remain in that relationship. So it's like that. So you maintain that. You may not be buying from them in that particular year or something, but it's not as if you cut off from them. So that has given them a lot of some kind of confidence and to continue on that journey. The second thing is about these organizations is the fact that because of this partnership, we have always encouraged our partners or our FPOs to climb up the value chain. And that is a very, very difficult thing for many of these farmer organizations because of lack of capital, lack of risk appetite, etc., etc. So those are some distinct problems which we have been able to address because we have had a long journey with them. And you'll find that some of our partners who were supplying us with, let's say, a primary commodity like paddy, right, today supply us rice, right? So that's climbing up the value chain. They're able to hold inventory for us. We don't have to hold inventory and build up our costs. So it comes from them almost like on a JIT basis, right? Whenever we need it, they're able to interact with others. So relationship with us has helped them. So we are not into a contract farming model at all. So we don't hold them. They're not like bonded slaves or something like us, because of the fact that it's not something that I'm doing something great service or something. It's because of the fact that I'm not buying whatever they're producing today, right? So they need to have those other channels also available. And it's good that they're able to do that. So that's the second level of this thing, maturing of our relationship with them. And the third is that there is a requirement of working capital, right? There is a requirement of credit. And we have been able to, kind of design tripartite sort of agreements with credit agencies where we underwrite and the credit is provided to the farmer organization to be able to buy from their farmers or to build some kind of infrastructure so that they can hold inventory or process or mill or something like that. So I think that is a relationship which is an ongoing sort of work. And slowly I think this will grow even further. And it's a kind of a win-win solution because there are many costs which I don't have to bear today, which I had to bear earlier. There are certain kind of oversight and overheads that I had to take care of, which I don't have to do that anymore, right? So it helps.
So this is enabled very clearly then.
Yes.
This is sort of had the overall community or the existing set of folks to sort of have a very clear market. So has it accelerated more farmers joining the bandwagon? They also started seeing that, okay, this is something that's possible, getting a better price, getting predictable demand. So are you seeing more farmers joining in, or still you feel that the hockey
absolutely.
stick?
I think when we started, we were not 30 farmer organizations. We were only 8. So one is the number of organizations has gone up. We were primarily buying from only 4 or 5 states. Today, we buy from more than 8 states. So these are, because of the expansion in terms of the organizations who have come in. It's also because of the fact that we are now, buying more products. We were not in, today we are about 55 to 60 products and 110 SKUs. Earlier, I think we were only about 30 products or so. So the number of products has gone up. So our relationship with those new farmer organizations has come in. There is interest amongst farmer organizations because you must understand that, right? Because take a product like commodity like groundnuts, for example, right? Now groundnuts can be grown in all the seasons. Now, but there are regions who grow it in the monsoon season. There are some who grow in the winter. There are some in the summers. So for a single product to work with 3 organizations who are probably in these 3 geographies, I'm not saying that I have all 3, but that's a very great situation or a great comfort for a company like Safe Harvest, because then I don't have to hold inventory. I can buy in the post monsoon, I can buy post winter, and I can buy post summer.
Got it.
So something like that. So for the same product, you have 3 partners, right? So
got it.
That also has kind of helped us and helped these organizations also.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. So I think interestingly, we spoke about the source, origin, channel, and then I think even before the term crowdfunding or crowdsourcing came in, you actually did it where the farmers came together and then have enabled to create this brand. And the most important thing when such sort of a supply is created is to have the market prepared for it. So now farmers understand that this is important and I need to grow it this way. And there are consumers who are also conscious about like what they want to eat, and it's going higher by the year. Now, how do both of them meet?
Well, that's actually it's actually a challenge for safe food. When you're
especially without involving middlemen in between who don't have any other vested interests for themselves.
So, well, the issue is, let's say Bangalore, and let's say an area like Madhya Pradesh, from where we are buying some of our commodities and all that. And how do you establish a supply chain, right? You need a dedicated supply chain. You have to ensure that contamination does not happen, etc., before it reaches your consumer. So that is one connect, you can say, that as volumes will grow and and as there is a consistent demand from the market, like Bangalore or any other metro that we are working in, then there is a kind of connect that can be established. That's number one, right? Number two is the fact that there is now a lot of emphasis on, let's say, something like traceability, right? So as this awareness goes, or let's say this kind of thought process comes in consumers, that they're more and more keen on knowing from where my food is coming, right? Who is growing this food? Whose hand is involved in this, right? And if we can create this, right, this ecosystem where consumers are interested, right? It is already happening, right? But this can be hastened. Then this connect will become even more easier, right? Because for some product is easy. You see, you can take consumers and you can ask them if they're from near Bangalore to this, rural, which is right next door, which probably happens in some other perishables and all that, vegetables, dairy, etc. They grow around this thing. They can't come from far because the supply chain is very complicated. But here there is a difference, right? So you can take them to the farm and actually make, you can get a feel of what is going on, and which is what we want. We want consumers to be able to know or relate to those producers, right, who are bringing food onto their table. So we have to look for other ways of doing it, right, which maybe not be the most effective, but yes, it is more effective than what it is today, is to create this consistent demand, right, and make these faces real, right, who are growing this food. And the other way of actually doing it is about making sure in terms of traceability, right, through other means. For example, we discussed this about QR code, right, where you have a report, right. Now a report also in some ways is impersonal, right. It's just kind of details out all the chemical compounds and tells you that, okay, none of the residues are there and you can be very happy about it. But you leave this desire, kind of unaddressed, that who's behind this ultimately, right? And that is where the rest of the elements of information and knowledge has to come in, where you make consumers go closer to those farmers. And similarly from the other side, that it's important for farmers to actually know where my produce is going, right? Ultimately, who's the one who's consuming this? And we keep doing this, we keep trying. On the farmer's end, we have been able to do it far more successfully because the access is very clear. Consumers are far more difficult because there's not a one-on-one relationship, right? But through other means, because just the way I told you, there's digital platforms available. There are more and more people coming back to us through our QR code, this thing where they ask us, where does this produce come from? Which is the geography? Is this geography anyway default organic or something like that? Or have the farmers switched from conventional farmers to being now pesticide-free farmers? So these are interesting sort of questions to kind of to deal with, right? And they are starting points in some kind of discussion. And this is the connect. The QR code is one connect. Supply chain is another connect, which needs to be explained, because this is something which is completely in the unknown territory today, right? How does the food come onto your table without being contaminated? Right?
No, you're right. I think largely when the food categories we need to see, one is fruits and vegetables. Of course, there is this organic and pesticide-free in vegetables and fruits also. Second, dairy, animal produce, dairy, eggs, all of these products where people test for growth hormones, antibiotics, all of that. Then there are these packaged foods where the new in thing is basically to read the labels and understand the ingredients, what is good and what is bad. But when it comes to staples, there is no ingredient which is fundamentally different from how a packaged food. You can pick up any FMCG product, you can flip it back, and then you can read the ingredient it's made of, and then you can say, oh, you know what, I feel this ingredient is bad, artificial color I don't want, artificial hormone I don't want, and all of that. But when it comes to staples, which is, by the way, it's like the much larger consuming category than even your packaged sort of snacks and other categories. So staples is so important. So do you think consumers are taking that much effort to understand like how should I be buying my staple? And this is very important to avoid in my staple, which is going in, because Indian staple food is rice or wheat. And both are staple products and which don't have any ingredient concept, but how is it grown?
Let me take the example of rice. You just mentioned it, right? So if you look at rice, just a few years back also, the only differentiation which was in the minds of most consumers in India was basmati and non-basmati, right? Basmati was considered this premium, etc., and the rest of the rice was all part of the same bandwagon, right? Today it is not so, correct? Now people associate with varieties, with regions. If you speak to anybody today, they will say Sona Masuri, they will say Basmati, Ambe Mohar, something, they will know at least more than 3 varieties of rice. Now that, I think, is an awareness sort of building. That has come from both ends. It has come from the market and the brands, and it has come from the interest of the consumers in what they are consuming, putting on the table. So I think that's number one, which has happened. So there is, now a growing sort of awareness, or let's say hunger for information. The second thing is in these products, as you said, say staples, there is a lot which happens post-cooking also, right? You take rice, you cook, and in rice, it's about age, correct? A rice which is, let's say, 4 or 6 months old versus something which is 8 to 12 months old. There is a huge difference in the post-cooking parameters. It'll be more fluffy if it is more aged. It'll give you better yield in the sense that you take up 1 unit of rice, it'll give you more of cooked rice. So, and these are things which people understand. Unfortunately, what has happened today is that people are also shying away from going into kitchen, right? So they probably, earlier they were cooking every day. Today, probably they're cooking only 4 times a week. And this is not, I'm saying that the women have to go and cook. I think it is a responsibility of everyone to kind of go back to their kitchens. So it is related somewhere to that particular what you were asking. So rice is very clear, right? Apart from the varieties and the taste, it's also about the post-cooking characteristics of the product. Secondly, it is about let's say if you take a product like groundnuts, for example, or anything like that. It's about the quality in terms of people don't look at the fact that there are so many things going into groundnut which can be actually harmful to you, in the sense that if you're not taking care at the time of growing or post harvest. And if that can be taken to people, right, of consumers, in that domain, if it reaches, for example, we highlight the fact that our groundnuts are aflatoxin free, right? Now, this is not about chemicals. This is about how you store, what you do after post harvest, etc. To the groundnuts. So, if this, and aflatoxins are carcinogenic, and this is an information which is completely absent in the domain today, right? So, if this can go, and if this can go from, let's say, because FirstClub is sensitive to such information going to consumers, then there is a differentiation that you're creating between you and the others. And this has nothing to do with taste. This has nothing to do with cultivation practices. It has just to do with the fact that how you are storing, how you are drying, right? So, and thirdly, it's about just the way rice is. It's about other products also. You can take pulses, for example, and I think we were talking about pulses the other day when we were in your office. Is about India imports a lot of pulses today, right? You take imported dal, right, which you cook. Probably you must be eating every day, one dal or the other in your house, and you take any dal which has been grown in the country itself. I'm not saying pesticide-free, organic, nothing like that. There is a clear difference between the two, right? Post-cooking, which you will find. This dal will be separated, the imported, it will never kind of become the way we understand, or we have this thing of dal, understanding of dal, and the Indian grown dal will be. Similarly, for conventionally grown dal and the taste, you may add many things to curry. I face this problem a lot amongst my cynical colleagues of mine who sometimes tell me, dal is a dal, right? What is the great difference between dals? I say that, look, you pick up Safe Harvest dal and you take up any other dal of some brand which is not in this space, and you will find your difference, right? Why should I be the one who should be telling you or impressing upon you that there is a difference, right? You should try on your own. And the third factor, which we don't highlight today, right? But I think we should be doing that. That's our shortcoming, not anybody else's as a brand, is the fact that why are people becoming so much sensitive about the region from where their produce is coming? It's almost like GI tagged, right? Basmati is GI tagged. Now, when you talk about jeera, for example, they say no, it's coming from Kutch, it's coming from Rajasthan, etc. Is because there is some quality, there is some value attached to that, right? And that is connected to cooking and post-cooking flavors or taste, right? And if cultivation and region from where you're getting your produce or you're sourcing your produce comes together, right, there is bound to be a difference from what is normally or conventionally available in mainstream.
So what you're saying is it's not just about the safety part of it, but even from the taste part of it, it plays a big role. And there are there will always be one section of Indians who will say that no, I don't care about anything else, but just for the taste, I think you should go for the brand, right? So I mean, I think from a brand,
I feel for taste, people are ready to pay a price. So I think even there, look at fruits, look at vegetables and staples. People are ready to pay a premium. How much that premium should be is now, that is a matter of, kind of is left best to a consumer. But definitely a consumer is ready to pay a premium as long as it ticks all these boxes.
Correct. No, you're right. And that's the reason why on our platform, it's not just about curating a set of brands basis, say, what sells the highest, basis who's giving us the best margin, but for any of the category, we put these specific standards like why should a certain brand be listed. That is one. Second, once that standard is set, only the top 3 brands of the respective categories with respect to all the quality parameters will get to be on the platform.
Yeah.
So because like we were discussing, you cannot put the burden on the consumer to go through hundreds of products when they're buying.
Yes.
When you throw more, they get confused.
Correct.
So we want to give a limited set, and here you're solving for quality, you're solving for safety, taste, and on top of it, the moment you work closely between us, I think you're directly working with farmers, we are working with you directly. This way, the better pricing also can be enabled to the consumers.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't have to be like, hey, it has to be super premium if you
Correct.
need to sort of move to such a good produce, but even at a good price, you'll be able to sort of afford. I think that will sort of set the change in consumption pattern and how people see this as like, yeah, this is basic. I can't be like consuming.
I think the biggest service you're doing to a consumer is that you're taking care of the clutter. You know, this confusion comes also from this clutter. There's so much of noise around this health, immunity, etc. Right?
Yeah.
And you are treating food just as fuel when they talk about, this thing about protein, for example, right? You're just separating that out from the rest, correct? That what I talked about kitchen, for example. Right? When you go into a kitchen, for example, and I cook, I don't cook very often, but yes, whenever I cook, there is a relationship that you form with that particular product, right? You're cutting a vegetable or you're washing your lentils, right? You are thinking about it, right? From where it has come, what it is doing, etc. If there's a disconnect with that completely, right? Then your food will also not carry much for you, right? You will only be, let's say falling into that trap of ultra processed food or whatever you call it, because there is a question of comfort and nothing else.
Got it.
So what you are doing is also in a way pushing people back that, start loving what you're eating.
Yeah, absolutely. We all spend so much time in consumerism and everything, but the fuel, like you said, is the food.
Correct,
and if you don't choose the right one, then either you spend on food or on hospital.
Right.
The choice is yours. Where you want to spend. So, yeah. So if you could ask consumers for one change in their behavior, consumption, shopping, what would that be? One change.
Well, I've repeated it so many times. One change, I will say, please go back into your kitchens, and start, cooking again. Start loving the very act of cooking. Go closer to your food or what you're consuming, right? And that definitely will form a completely different sort of relationship with food. So, from what it is today.
Got it. Yeah. I think closer to it, then you notice more, you be more conscious on what you're buying, what you're eating, everything.
Absolutely.
That's true. So, you've spent like these many decades in this. What gives you the hope?
You see, what gives me hope is the fact that, firstly, I come from the farmer's side that way. What gives me hope is to see these farmer collectives actually doing much better than before. And in fact, their optimism is my optimism, because optimism is not just, this airy-fairy thing. What they're seeing something happening on their land. That's the first optimistic signal that they're getting, that my land is better. I'm getting the same kind of produce. The second is in terms of the connect that they now have with markets. The third is the collectives that they have been able to form. This kind of social fencing. They started with, let's say, a few farmers, 10%, 20% of the village. Today it has gone to 80 to 90% of the village doing the same kind of protocol, right? So it's a kind of a fencing. Now there's no danger or risk of pesticide contamination happening from outside into their land. So they're completely secure in that way. So that gives you a lot of hope, right? Because now it is not something that you're pushing in, correct? Because they now have completely absorbed this. Now, whether it's safe harvest or no safe harvest, they'll continue doing that kind of agriculture, correct? So because there is some kind of economics involved in that, there is a math involved in that, right? It's cheaper now for them to do this kind of farming. The second is in terms of the fact that their collectives have now become bigger. So they're able to kind of dream bigger. So it's not just about primary commodity. It's about value addition. It's about the fact of investing into infrastructure. It's about the fact that converting paddy into rice and selling rice. It's not just about dealing with safe harvest, dealing with other this thing. So that's one part. On the other side, also you find that there are more and more consumers now beginning to understand and beginning to engage with this question. They may not be buying safe harvest, or that is not what is important. The first thing is engagement. I find that in the last year or two, the engagement level with the brand of consumers has gone up tremendously, right? We keep getting questions from people, and we keep getting questions also with people in the government departments who are involved with food safety, right? They have started coming back to me and saying that, what is your badge? And they're getting into intricate questions about this, right? So that gives me a lot of hope that even if, and the biggest optimism comes from the fact that, which I keep repeating, I've been keep repeating it for the last 1.5 years after I've seen this happening right in front of my eyes, is that for a country like India, whether we turn organic or no completely, pesticide-free is definitely possible. So that is the optimism that I carry, right? And I see that because I am working only with 15 to 20,000 in a transactional relationship. My number is growing. I've reached 100,000 farmers who are kind of today practicing this kind of agriculture. So from the supply side, I don't have much issues. My problem is demand, and that's where FirstClub comes in as our strategic partner.
We will do it together.
Yes.
That's the hope. Lovely. So good to hear your journey and where Safe Harvest started. And I think a lot of information when it comes to choosing the right stuff when it comes to eating. I'm sure people who have heard this would be a lot wiser in choosing the right choices that they're going to make when it comes to staples. Thanks for doing this, and continue to build for all of us.
See, the demystification answer I found now.
So what's the food myth you would like to break?
The myth is, in today's world, especially for this generation, is all about the fact, as you said, at the back of the pack, is about nutrients, right? And this separation, this isolation of nutrients is something which is completely wrong, right? Food is complex. It's about complex sugars, complex high carbohydrates. Until unless food is like that, right, you can never enjoy it, or you can never be satiated in the sense of this thing. So you're going more and more into comfort food, more and more you're becoming unhealthy if you make such choices. So that is a demystification that we want to try doing.
Got it.
Especially given today's world, right, where you're moving towards protein bars and this thing.
Everything is made very simple.
Yes.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah. No, but lovely to have the chat. It was so engrossing and very insightful. And I'm sure everybody who's hearing this would be a lot more informed in making the right choices when it comes to food and staples. Thanks for building Safe Harvest. And I'm sure we'll partner together and ensure a lot more people are consuming the right kind of food choices in their lifestyle. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ayyappan. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Great opportunity.
Yeah.